Hi guys! Welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new legal advice content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first one is titled, "My mother just called me and said she just discovered that someone had pillaged the trees on the wooded half of our family's small farm. What legal recourses do we have to deal with this?" Ohio. Backstory as I understand it. My mom has a small farm in southeast Ohio. There are a few acres of plantable land, with wooded hills on the rest of it. The property and neighboring properties all go from the road back to the gas line land behind them, kind of like townhouses on a larger scale. The next door neighbor is a good friend of the family, so they are always staying in contact about issues that affect the other. Burglars breaking into the garages, dangerous wildlife popping up on the neighbor's trail cams, general farm issues, etc. Shortly after my dad died last fall, my neighbor informed my mom that some logger working for or with someone who lived on the other side of him, I don't remember whether it was his immediate neighbor or someone farther down, had gone through the woods out back of all their property marking prime trees for logging. Apparently, the neighbor met whoever was prepping for logging and informed them that they were likely on our family's land and that they couldn't log there. This was second-hand knowledge from a while back, but I believe the story went those discussions with the person wanting the area logged resulted in them saying they believed the woods were on their property but were unwilling to get the land surveyed because they didn't want to pay a bunch of money for a survey. I walked the back of the farm with the neighbor shortly after that happened and we found all the property line stakes, and there were trees marked for cutting far inside the boundaries. I don't recall too much about what happened, but the whole thing seemed to fizzle out. Jump to today. I got a call at work from my mom saying that she was working up near the woods on the back of the farm and discovered that they had been pillaged, her words, by logging. She's getting the sheriff involved as far as I know, but I'm stuck at work for the next couple hours trying to figure out anything I can to help with little information. She is very averse to using legal action against anyone and may not inquire about all legal options available to her, so I want to get as much knowledge, insight, etc. pulled together so she doesn't miss anything important. If it was done by the people we were originally having trouble with last year, then, as far as I know, much of the dispute was handled with in-person communication between neighbors. What sort of paper trail could I look for here, and what are some obvious and non-apparent things we should document and preserve here? Are there any case studies for illegal logging that I should be aware of that I could read and learn anything useful from? If you had a client with this sort of situation, what third parties would you consult about it? There is a lot of state forestry / nature preservation etc. in the area, but her property isn't involved with that in any way, so would any forestry or nature organizations be worth talking to for any relevant information, especially with regards to illegal logging? Who should I be talking to at the county / city level about making sure the property lines are legit and the incursion was illegal? Should I be trying to get statements from them? What should our action plan be? Update 1. I finally got to meet up with my mom and talk about it, and it's larger scale and more immediate than I thought. It's dark out, so I haven't seen this yet myself, and don't want to go walking around and or possibly over the property line for legal reasons tonight. But apparently the person on the other side of our neighbor has brought loggers in to clear-cut his land. The loggers went clear across our neighbor's land and are currently cutting their way into our land with many more trees visibly marked for cutting on our land. I'm told there is a large and potentially valuable tree that naturally fell recently and that the shape of their work looks like they are cutting a path towards. Our neighbors are expecting loggers to be up there working their way deeper into our property tomorrow morning. I'm going to Walmart tonight and snatching up as many no trespassing and similar signs as possible to plaster all over the trees near the property line. We have multiple surveys and GIS maps printed out that clearly show our property that the loggers and their client are claiming they have a right to cut and have already been cutting. So, my current plan is to use the signs to zone out their planned cut in the morning with a conservative distance in from our property line to make sure I'm not encroaching with the signs myself, in case that gives us any more casus belli for legal action if they cross the posted area or vandalize the signs in any way. My mother contacted the sheriffs and they said they will not even be sending someone to check out the scene of the crime. In my hurried Googling of the subject today, I've actually seen a lot of mentions of sheriffs blowing off illegal logging crimes on private property. What the actual duck? What are the legal concerns for standing well inside our property line armed with our rifles tomorrow if they attempt further trespass and/or bring in heavy equipment that we might impede by standing in front of? We want to do as much as we can to protect our land, but we are also determined to build the most airtight criminal and/or civil case against them, so we want to find the optimization point between doing everything we can to stop them from further destruction, theft, and trespass, but nothing that will prevent us from throwing every legal paper in the book at them. Semi-update. It turns out the neighbor gave my mom the phone number of the logger, so I'm going to see what I can learn, but we'll try to avoid doxing them for the time being. Update 2. Not sure where to start because there's so much new information today and it's still Saturday for me, so I'm getting tired, but I'll try to get most of this out. I finally got to see it in the daylight, and we didn't lose as many trees as I initially thought, but they did take multiple large trees. One count was at least 5 2-feet plus stumps among many other smaller trees, destroyed much of the land with a bulldozer stripping all the undergrowth. My mom loved a lot of the wild herbs that were growing there with names I don't remember, Trillion or something, and, we think of great interest to the forestry department, they bulldozed straight across the gullies to make temporary logging roads blocking all drainage and piled up tree debris in other gullies blocking drainage there as well. A lot of it looks like it's one heavy rain away from damming up, breaking, and flash flooding the land below it. Our neighbor's land was completely trashed though. They basically dozed a large road straight the center of his land to branch off of, and the whole valley looks like Godzilla and King Kong went at it. He counted well over 15 of the largest stumps. There is probably around a quarter to half-acre pile of 2 feet plus logs sitting on the far neighbor's land, the one who brought in the loggers. As we understand it, most of the logs currently sitting on the far neighbor's land are from the last couple days, and all are mostly from our properties, as many of the stumps match up, and 2 at the far end of the pile are the ones with specific markings that he was compensated for at the beginning of their incursion on his property, which is explained in more detail further down. Our neighbor has seen trucks hauling logs out before these, so we think most of the far neighbor's logs have already been sold. We've been documenting them with photos and measurements as best we can. Our closest neighbor had permission to be on his land. I did get to meet the neighbor between us who got hit the hardest, also confirmed chill now, so I'll probably have to update the MS Paint. We put up a lot of no trespassing signs on the logging areas around his land. We also erected a large sign in the middle of the logging road at the entry to his property informing the loggers of the Ohio Revised Code violation and general cease and desist language. I learned from him that when they first started logging on his property they offered him compensation, $150 for the first 2 trees they cut, and he accepted, but then he told them to stop and not cut any more on his land. He walked the land with the loggers and the neighbor who hired them a couple days ago, and they basically lied to him about where the property lines were. Told them that the logging neighbor's land went far over his land, and that his land was actually over on my mother's land. They marked the property lines together. IIRC those were still violating his actual property lines, and he told them not to cut on his land. It turns out they ignored him, continued logging on his land, and even cut past the lines they said were the far side of his land into my mother's land. So, they basically said, "No, we have all this. Your property is from over there to way over there." And then went all the way over and beyond those false boundaries anyway. Our neighbor does know and have names for most of the loggers, and it turns out they're not an official logging outfit and generally sketchy dudes with a history of theft and even an outstanding warrant for one of them. We finally got a junior deputy to come out, and he just did some basic stuff to prep for passing it off to his superior and said there really isn't much they can do, kept claiming it's only a civil matter. Both my mom and our neighbor filed official reports though. They still won't actually do anything impactful though, especially with regards to preventing them from removing the lumber, and we're very concerned that nothing is stopping them from just getting out with the evidence and selling it. The only thing they've said they'll do is show up to arrest the guy with the outstanding warrant if we see him. The logging neighbor is basically saying he doesn't know shit and has someone else managing the project for him. We think he brought in the loggers because he was desperate for cash, as he has some local restaurant or bar that went bankrupt, and because he owes people money. My brother's stepdad is an arborist, and he came to do a simple unofficial walkthrough to give us advice. He checked the pile of logs and said that many of them were actually not the highest quality wood as far as lumber sales go. Due to a lot of little conditions in each log, he pointed out, and looking at the actual boards you could get out of them, and that the value of them for lumber was absolutely nowhere near the value of them in their original state. both from a property value, principal's value, and violation value. He also concluded from the way everything was cut and handled that the people doing it must have been practically retarded and said they just went through chopping everything without thinking. While walking around with him, we found at least one standing tree that was cut mostly through on all sides and left upright where it was basically just waiting to fall over and kill someone at any minute. We're getting the forestry department involved for whatever that will do. We think the big breakthrough is one of the loggers offered the neighbor $150, which he accepted, for the first couple trees they cut. He told them to stop after that though, and they didn't, and he has the text conversation of that guy offering him money for his trees. He is also an eyewitness to that guy, his brother and a couple other guys doing the logging. So, we can definitely tie at least that guy specifically to the logging. We also got pictures of the rented bulldozer sitting on our neighbor's land, so I'm pretty sure they plan to subpoena that company's records to figure out who paid for it. I'm getting a communal Google Drive together for all of us to compile our photos, videos, and any relevant documentation or information. So much I'm spacing on and forgetting to mention and sleepy as hell, but Op will continue delivering. Update 3. The far neighbor who hired the loggers just stopped by and flip-flopped between trying to tell me that he wanted to make things right, that the logging wasn't even on our or our neighbor's property, and that he was already working with the forestry department so it's all okay. He said they were working with him to eradicate invasive species and were supportive of his operations, and that guy we contacted at the department is a good buddy of his, so they likely won't do anything as they already have a plan worked out with them through 2018. I said it's highly unlikely that they support the destruction of the land that results in blocking natural drainage of rain runoff, especially on unrelated people's property. He said, "Oh, we're going to fix that." I asked him why he thought he had access to and control of our and our neighbor's property to do that. I told him that I didn't believe most of what he was saying was correct and that it disagreed with the information we had. He said, "Well, how much did they even come over on your property?" And I told him, any amount is too much. Anything he tried to get out of me or agree to, I just told him to contact our lawyer. I'll be updating as things develop and as I see new advice here. The next one is titled, Homeowner Association Trespassing, occurred in Colorado. I rent a condo that has a private patio. It has a privacy wall all around minus a small section of shrubs to opens to our parking lot. Last week I watched as someone walked over the shrubbery and on our porch. By the time I could put shoes on, he was gone, and I didn't see him nearby. This morning I got an email from my landlady saying the homeowner association had sent a notice that I was in violation due to having a charcoal grill on the patio. The notice included a picture of the grill. The grill is not visible from the parking lot, only from inside my own unit. The only way they knew was by coming onto the patio. My landlady said she was unaware that they had been there until she received the notice. I've reviewed the homeowner association bylaws and rules and there is nothing stating they have permission to come onto our patios to inspect them. I also reviewed state statutes, along with local laws and codes, and could not find anything stating homeowner association managers were allowed to come onto the property without notice unless there was an emergency. I really don't consider this small rule violation an emergency. I emailed my landlady and expressed my concerns about the situation. I did rectify the rules violation by removing the grill, so I'm back in compliance. Should I proceed any further? How can I keep this from happening again? Update. Thank you everybody for the replies. I was able to clarify that the patio is not a general common element and therefore property management needs to at least notify my landlord if they access it. Them choosing to just walk onto it counts as trespassing. I'm choosing to let my landlord interact with the homeowner association management instead of myself. I'm documenting the entire issue and saving emails including the pictures they took. If it happens again, I will be taking further action. Additionally, there is still a question of storage versus use of the grill. My landlord has said it's okay to keep outside since I don't use it and the rules technically only specify the use, not the possession of the grill. I will be putting a cover on it though so it can't be seen anymore. The last one is titled, Closing on House on Christmas Eve and Concerned Someone May Be Living There. Arkansas. I understand if that sounds ridiculous. My husband and I are in the process of buying a former rental property. The guy we're buying the house from says that the previous owner had evicted the last tenant almost 2 months ago, at which point he bought the house with the intent of remodeling, and for reasons that aren't mine to share, he had to put it back on the market. He went on to say that the guy had left all of his belongings and we would have to get rid of everything as he lives too far away. Okay, no problem. We walked into the house yesterday to find food, baby pictures, clothing, etc. As well as the utilities still on. The city says utilities are about to be shut off for non-payment, so it's possible he really did just leave without bothering to take anything. If that's the case, still no problem. My question. What am I legally able to do if this guy is still living there? Would he be considered a tenant or a squatter at that point? Could I get myself into trouble if I change the locks and leave my number so I can at least try to get his things back to him? Update. I didn't have time yesterday to respond to comments, but I want to thank everyone who took the time. Fortunately, it won't be an issue. The city stepped in because of a related problem to inform the current homeowner that it was his job to make sure the previous tenant was actually gone. When we passed by the house today, almost all signs of an occupant were gone and everything that was left was on the curb for trash pickup. Added bonus. This problem showed me that I'm moving to a town full of people who care about people, and as a result I'm even more confident that we're making the right move. Thanks for listening.